So in this question, 11c, it asks you to demonstrate how the file size of a video with 640 by 480 resolution, 256 colours, that's 24 frames per second, and goes for a minute and a half is calculated. The first thing to remember that it's essentially this formula is just multiplying everything together. The one thing where you will get caught up in an exam is that often you get asked about the number of colours, whereas bit depth is the formula in the calculation. So also the same thing with the time. Here time is in seconds, but here time is a minute and a half. So the first thing that you need to do is make sure that you have the bit depth and the time calculated correctly. So this asks for to demonstrate how the file size is created. So it's not just a matter of getting the correct answer in here, it's actually about showing the process of how it's calculated. In order to do that, you need to first of all put the formula in. It's the height times the width times the bit depth times the frames per second times the time over 8 times 1024 in order to get it into kilobytes, which is the standard in multimedia for this subject. Once you've done that, you need to replace all of the features of the calculation. So 640 by 480 is the resolution, easy enough. 8 is actually the bit depth. So the reason that it's the bit depth is 2 to the bit depth equals the number of colours. So in this case, 2 to the power of 8 equals 256 colours. That's a standard one you really should remember because that's the one that comes up most of all, essentially because that is the GIF file format. The other thing is you've got here the frames per second is 24, so that's correct. And the time is equal to 90 because the time is in seconds. So a minute and a half is 60 seconds in a minute and 30 seconds in a half a minute. So add them together, that's 90. So when you've done that, you've got then your calculation over here. And one of the things that you need to remember is that the order of operations specify that you need to do the top half of the calculation and the bottom half of the calculation separately and then divide one by the other. If you put into your calculator 640 times 480 times 8 times 24 times 90 divided by 8 times 1024, it will do it in that order. So what it'll do is do this calculation first, and so this calculation first, and then it'll divide the whole thing by 8 and then multiply the whole thing by 1024. So it's very important that those are separated. I always like to write down the first part of the formula and then write down the second part of the formula. And then of course you've got the final answer. So your marks here were allocated first of all for the formula being correct. Then you would have gotten a mark for replacing the bit depth and a mark for replacing the time. You would have gotten 1 mark for getting the calculation correct so that you've got the calculation in there, and then 1 mark for the final answer.